Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name, of course, you probably have guessed, is Kevin McDonald. And today we've got a great guest for you because this is a area that doesn't really often get talked about a great deal. And it has to do with business, has to do with personnel in business and taking care of people and running your business to its highest efficiency, productivity levels possible, which I know that will intrigue a lot of you business owners out there because profits? You mean I can make more profit? You mean I can lead my company in a better way? Doug Lawrence is my guest, and he is a mentor. And he's actually what they call a mentor's mentor because he mentors mentors. Whatever that means. And we're going to talk with him for the entire hour. And first of all, Doug, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to our time together.
It'll be great fun because in my past, my distant past, I was in management and I ran companies and stuff like that, and predominantly in the restaurant world. And in the restaurant world is always full of turnover because kids are coming and going to college or dropping out of college, whatever. And so it always intrigued me and always was something that I really enjoyed talking about was in business and how to actually run a business for both its financial well-being and also its cultural well-being, if you will. And that's what you work with companies quite a little bit to do. You're also an author of a #1 bestseller, which we're going to talk about. And it's great to have you here. Now, you describe yourself as a mentor's mentor. What exactly does that mean?
Well, you have people that are mentors in your organization, and they don't always have all the answers. And so I'm that person that they can come to and sort of say, gee, Doug, I was working with this one employee and asked me this sort of question, and how should I go about responding, or should I respond? And so I'm mentoring them through their process of being able to bring value back to the employee and the organization.
It's a really good thing that you do because there are a lot of, let me take the sales organization as an example. In many cases, when a supervisory sales job comes up with an organization and they're starting to look at who do we want to promote, if they're going to promote somebody from within or they're going to go outside of the company to bring somebody in, a lot of times they're saying, well, this guy's a great sales guy. I think he would make a great manager because he's a great sales guy. But those are two completely different skill sets. One, being a great sales guy means that it comes easy to you. But if you're working with a staff of salespeople that you're trying to teach and to learn how to be a good salespeople, they may not be the right fit for that company. So when you go talk to a company and you're helping them figure out how best to structure their organization, how does that work for you and them to get the best fit for a supervisory person to come on board that can be successful without there being a really long learning curve?
Sometimes you can't avoid the long learning curve, which is kind of a sad story, but a large part of what I do is I do what I call a culture assessment. So I go into an organization and I will interview. If it's a small organization, I'll interview everybody. If it's a larger one, I'll do a random sample of employees. And what I'm looking for is this organization ready for mentoring, number one? And then number two is, what are some of the skeletons that are in the closet that we're going to uncover as a result of doing this culture assessment? And at the end of the day, at the end of the rainbow, what I hope to be able to find is, here are some challenges that the organization will have unless we address those in the short term. And then, are they actually ready for mentoring? Because what I've found is that once you do that assessment, the organization is actually looking for you to step in and provide them with, or create the structure for mentoring within their organization.
Can you do that? Is that possible to do? Or when you're talking to the CEO, after you've done the interviews and you come up with the idea of where the company's at, do you get pushback from the CEO saying, no, that's not right? Because they're not in tune with what's happening in their own organization?
Normally, like, when I think back over the number of culture assessments that I did, at the end of it, when I made my recommendations, they were designed and supported by my interviews and that. But more importantly, they were designed so that the structure that comes out of that is very much in tune with the organization. So it kind of follows. We're basically kind of shaking the trees to get rid of the rotten apples, so to speak, and get things going forward. And doing that through the culture assessment process is for me, has been the most beneficial. And as far as pushback, once the CEO or whoever, the senior management, once they see the kind of the writing on the wall that, oh my God, you mean we have communication issues? That can be us. And then you show them the interviews where the employees are saying, the senior management, they don't communicate with us workers, and we need them to communicate more often. So once they start to see that, they start to go, okay, Doug, now tell us, what do we need to do to fix this?
And so what are some of the recommendations that you're liable to give somebody that's working in a company and a culture that is not operating on all cylinders?
One of the very two that usually two or three that jump out, but the first one is crucial conversations. So it's to be able to understand how conversations take place, and when you get a situation where there's pushback coming and the conversation is starting to become very, what would the word be?
Repetitive?
Well, repetitive, but crucial. It's very negative energy, all that sort of stuff. And so I know in a couple of them, what I've recommended is that they take crucial conversation training, and that they'll take it, and then I want them to go away and put that to practice. And then, 6 months to a year, we'll come back and we'll revisit that. That's one. The second is leadership, and leadership skills is typically something that kind of just jumps out at you right out of the gate. And so what we can do is we can do a couple workshops that's going to provide them with the extra tools that they need to be effective managers, effective leaders. And we can set it up so that they're going through a mentoring process. They'll have somebody who will walk beside them and help guide them on their journey. And what we typically end up doing is, at the end of a week, if I'm mentoring you, at the end of the week, we'll sit down and we'll say, so what went well this week? What didn't go well? And what should we do differently next time? And we kind of go through that process. And so we got crucial conversations, we've got leadership skills, and then the other part is the effective communication, is people knowing how to communicate, knowing when it's okay to speak and when you sometimes need to listen and hear. So those are some of the things that would come out of those interviews.
I've worked for a bunch of guys that really could use your support because they are. Well, there was one guy that he liked to tell us what he thought we wanted to hear as a sales organization, rather than what the truth was. And so he would say things like, "This is a sales-driven organization and a sales support organization. So we're going to support all the sales guys and make sure they have everything that they need to be successful." But the reality did not bear out the conversation that he was having, because he wasn't real with what he could do and what he couldn't do. So there were lots of times when we would be going, "Well, it's a sales driven organization, so I'm going to do this." And then we would get, "Well, we can't do that."
Yeah.
Because, and I never could figure out, he wasn't open to conversation. So I never could figure out whether it was because he didn't know, or if he was trying to make a game of it and to try and tell us something that, and hope we don't find out. Do you ever run across that kind of guy?
Oh, yeah. 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 There's lots of them out there. And, the big thing is they're trying to take their idea, which could be a round ball, and they're trying to stuff it into a square box and think that this is going to work, when in fact, that's the thing that I always get frustrated with, is the fact that things that we want the organization to do, we don't take a look to see, do we have the culture that's going to be able to support putting that into practice? Say a sales-driven organization could be a great one. Does the culture of the organization support its existence today, its well-being? And in a lot of cases, it doesn't.
Well, like in our case, it was a food service company. And so not only did we have the sales organization and the salespeople, but you have the procurement side and the people that bought the things that we were supposed to sell. And sometimes those things just did not match up. And because the leadership of the company was not able to take a firm stance on what they wanted in all departments, it ended up being like a big old fat cluster.
Yeah, or more, as I love to call that's the ostrich syndrome. So I bury my head in the sand, because if I can't see it and I can't hear it, it can't be happening.
Yeah, and then they don't ask for the input from the people that it's affecting. So because be careful when you ask that question. You may not like the answer you get.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's, well, I guess it's a good thing that we have those type of situations, because it keeps me going, and and it does present challenges at times. But I also see where there are some, with some of them, the thing that excites me the most is taking, as I call them, baby managers, and help give them the tools they need to be successful managers in tomorrow's world. And when you see stuff like that start to happen, it's sort of this silent gratitude that you get for what it is that you do, because I know that if I'm waiting for the pat on the back and stuff to come as a result of the mentoring stuff I've done, it doesn't always happen. So if you can figure out how to get that positive accolade to be able to help give you the motivation to continue to move forward, that's a good thing.
I got to ask you, in your opinion, are managers, just like great salespeople, but are great managers born, or can they be created?
I think it's a little, that's a age-old question, is, whether great managers are born, or are they something that, I think that it can be a combination of the two. But I know that from what I've definitely seen is that I think good managers can become great managers if they're given the opportunities to learn and grow personally and professionally, which is kind of the mentoring mantra, for lack of a better choice of words. So I think that I don't know that we have many out there. There's probably a couple, two or three, but I don't know that we have many out there that were born with the gift. Uh, I think most of them have learned through lived experience and through having somebody watch over them and give them the guidance that they need. Because when I think back to where I was, and I've led teams as many as 1 to as many as 160, and I would not have been able to do that had I not had somebody who guided me at some stage in my career.
Why is it, at least personal opinion, but it may be true or not, but why is it when you get your name on the door and you get the CEO underneath your name, it changes you somehow?
Yeah, it does. And that's the thing that, I think that part of what we're trying to uncover here is why does that happen? And I think, a lot of it is ego driven, as ego plays a part in a lot of other things, but I think a large part of it can be construed to be ego driven, where, okay, I've now reached the pinnacle in my career because I now have CEO on my door, and I must be doing something right, because they surely to goodness wouldn't put me in this position if I wasn't going to be the person that they wanted to have in there. And sometimes, I know when I think back to my time in the police force, we used to promote people just to get them out of the way, to get them
off the streets.
Get them off the streets. Yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to go there or not, but that's pretty much, that's it in a nutshell. And I've seen that lots, and I've worked with people that got to where they were simply because they needed to promote that person to get them out of the way before they hurt somebody.
Well, what is that saying that they say, the Peter principle? You rise to the level of your incompetence.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've seen that a lot. And when you know that somebody's in a position where their decisions could do harm to themselves or others, it's number one, it's sad that you actually see that, but what it also is it provides that opportunity for you to see, is this person going to be receptive to learning? And if they are they going to be receptive to spending time with me so that we can get them to where they need to be, and not because of them being promoted because they're inefficient.
By the way, we're talking with Doug Lawrence, and he has got a company. It's called TalentC.ca, because he's from Canada. He's in Saskatchewan, I do believe.
That's correct.
And we need to take a real quick break. But when we come back, I want to know what it's like for you. You get a call from the owner, who may be an absentee owner, and he calls you from his boat someplace, and he says, Doug, excuse me, Doug, I'm getting these things from the organization that I don't know that I like, but I don't know, can't put my finger on it. And so will you come in and talk to the CEO and kind of use your mentoring techniques and then get back to me and see if I can use your services to make the organization better? I want to know how the conversation with the CEO goes when you walk in the door and says, the owner says, I need to come and talk to you. Again, we're talking with Doug Lawrence. I don't know if there's an answer to that question, but I thought I would ask it anyway. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. I hope that woke everybody up. It is designed to, so that everybody can wake up and smell the coffee, as it were. And so we're talking with Doug Lawrence. He's a mentor's mentor, and he works with companies. He works with people that are in charge of making sure that the turnover's low, the productivity's high, everybody's whistling while they work, and everybody's a happy camper, and everybody loves to stay there. And sometimes it just doesn't start out that way, but he has a gift for making all of that happen. But I'm just curious to know, when you walk in to the CEO's office for the first time, and it wasn't he who invited you in, it might have been an owner or somebody along that, maybe an absentee guy, or he's just looking at the numbers, and the numbers aren't adding up to what he wants it to be. What's the conversation like when you sit down and talk with the CEO?
It is usually non-confrontational. I usually try to create that environment where we're going to have a meaningful dialogue, and it may start off simply by, I could use your advice and guidance on working with an organization, and I would tell a story that would draw him or her, draw them into the conversation to be able to think of some different approaches that they could take, and then I would turn it around to be able to then say, so what would happen if we were to try that here in this organization? And would you be receptive to us using this organization as let's just say, we'll call it a pilot for the short term?
Gotcha. And do you have to tippy toe around the ego a little bit sometimes?
Sometimes, yes. Yeah. Because if you don't, then you risk the chance of that no buy-in whatsoever, and then it becomes very difficult to get to where you need to get to.
And that is where you want to get to, is better profitability, lower turnover, higher employee satisfaction. Because I don't know if people know this, but then you can help me with this, but I do know that if you list the top 10 reasons why people will leave a company, money is like 6 or 7. It's not very high. A lot of it is job satisfaction, being rewarded for what they do, and that sort of thing. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Actually, I think your number one reason people leave is because of the management of the company. The actual, I'm positive that's, and I can't remember the number, but it's every year there's a consulting report that's done that talks about global trends and stuff in human resources and all of that. And every single time when you go through there, the thing that's holding the number one position without fail has always been leadership. That it's leadership is what causes people to pack their bags and move on to something what they think could be better.
Indeed. Why is it that there are some companies and some people in positions of power that they're just not open to change? Is it a generational thing? Is it the older folks, or is it just this is the way it's always been? This is how the company is operated, and so what was good for my dad is good for me. Is that kind of how it goes?
I think what you're seeing is the resistance to change comes from it would definitely not be the younger audience. It would definitely be a little bit more on the more mature side of things, wherein you've touched on, certainly on some good points where it's been this way. We've made it. It's not broken. So why are you trying to fix it sort of mentality, when in actual fact if I dig deep enough, I can validate that it is broken and we need to do something to change it for the better. So um, I think that that there are some people that are out there that are resistant to change without a doubt. It wouldn't matter what environment you put them into, they're going to find a reason to complain about what it is. And in some cases, they become that group of employees that we call disengaged employees, and they're the ones that try to do harm, and is the best way I can describe it, because they try to kind of upset the apple cart and be able to see this organization doesn't really know what it's doing. Look at all the things that are happening that are negative, and look at all this and all that. And they're the cause for most of that. And that's the group that we have to target.
And to target to either get them to change or to leave?
Or or help them leave, yes.
And there are some folks that I suppose that there are some people within an organization that are just not going to be happy regardless of what you do.
No. You have a good percentage if you go about it the right way. There are some steps that you can take to go about it the right way that will help them better appreciate or understand how their behavior is contributing to quite possibly the reason why they're not getting that promotion or that advancement. And so then that's when you can, if you do the right things, we can get them back on track and get them becoming that, or getting back to that employee that was a great contributor that did all kinds of different things. It's even, I had one situation where the employee was very negative. In fact, they were very close to terminating this particular employee. And something simple as, we had a conversation, and I said, so tell me a little bit about your day. And so he ends up going through and telling me, he at lunchtime, he just stays and takes calls and tries to eat his lunch, and gets madder and madder as the day goes on, because all the stuff he's dealing with is very negative, because it's people that don't know how to restart their computer, and it's all sorts of stuff, IT, information technology related. And all I did was I made a simple suggestion. I said two things. Number one, the first is, every time you get a call, I want you to think that you're the teacher going to the classroom and you're going to educate somebody on how to go about starting, how to hit reboot on the computer, as an example. And I don't want you to go in and do the rebooting. I want you to talk the person through doing it so that they get to learn how to do that. The second thing is when you take your lunch hour, and I want you to get out of the building and just let everything go, because what you're doing is you're allowing all that negative energy to build up inside you, and it makes things worse for you when you come back to work.
That's brilliant advice. I'm struck though that the supervisor of that particular individual would allow that to continue, and knowing that the attitude had gone south, and rather, that's what a good supervisor would do, would be why don't you get out of the building? Let me cover the phone for that hour so that you can get out of the building, and then you'll be a happier guy, because I like you. You're a happy guy, but you're not happy here. And I want to change that for you. And that would be, to me, a good management person to have around.
Yeah. But that wasn't the case, because we kind of bypassed a couple steps in that logic, and we got to, the quickest way to end the problem is let's just terminate. And when I said, tell you what, let me have them for my typical 5 sessions. And if I don't think at the end of the third one, I don't think we're going to see any change, I'll come tell you as the manager. And then if you want to follow through and do your termination, you fill your boots, go right ahead. But I said, if given the chance, this employee will turn around and you're going to have that meaningful person. And you know what ended up happening was he ended up going to a company social event, and people didn't recognize him because he was a very much outgoing sort of individual. He was communicating, he was talking freely with people, he was doing all the right things. And they went, where did this other employee come from?
That's pretty amazing. Well, you treat people like real human beings. Sometimes the results can be nothing short of amazing. Again, we're talking with Doug Lawrence. He is a mentor. And when we come back, we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is turnover. Because turnover can be you don't see it on a P&L. You don't see it in it's a profit and loss statement anyway. You don't see it in their projections for their budget. You don't see it in any way, but it can be the death of a company if they're not careful because of the costs, the hidden costs involved with changing employees. And if your turnover is incessantly high, not only do you have a problem, but you're also wasting a tremendous amount of money. Again, we're talking to Doug Lawrence. Go to TalentC.ca to get all the information about him. And we're also going to talk about his book, which is an Amazon bestseller, in the second half. So we'll be right back after this station break.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We are talking with Doug Lawrence. He's an author. He's a mentor. He's a mentor's mentor. He's a mentor's mentor of mentors. Anyway, it's great to talk to him. He's from north of the border in Canada, and but he is a professional businessman who educates people on how to run their business more efficiently with higher productivity, lower turnover. One of the turnover, and Doug, perhaps you know better than I, is there a financial way that people measure turnover on how much or how little it's actually costing the company?
The number that I'm familiar with is that every time you have to hire a new employee, it's 1.5 to 2 times the annual salary is what is in lost productivity and all of those things. So it's 1.5 to 2 times the annual salary is what the cost of employee turnover actually is.
And so if a person is making, holy crap, I gotta get my calculator out here, but if a person's making 110 grand a year, and so to replace that person, it's going to cost $170,000.
Because you got to think of, lost productivity. So what they would have done during that time period, from termination to, or when, let's say, they left on their own accord, to the actual getting somebody identified and hired. But then you've also got the training period on top of that, where they're not really a contributor productivity wise until they've been properly trained. And so you've got to add that factor into there. And then what if, heaven forbid, they are not a good fit for the organization?
Well, you know, the most insidious thing about that is a lot of turnovers generated by people willingly leave the company because they've got a better opportunity to go to elsewhere. The what you would define as a good employee, that's even more expensive, I would think.
It could be, and what you've actually touched on is one. I know one organization that I was working with or in as an employee. They used to get absolutely frustrated. They'd go through a mental breakdown almost because an employee was actually leaving, and what they didn't realize was, in their particular case, that employee leaving was also a way to market opportunities in their organization. So they could position it. So having somebody leave is sometimes not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing because it does position your organization as an opportunity-rich organization.
But doesn't that mean that it's important for you as an organization to have policies in place to educate and to train junior employees to then become those senior employees and to not hire outside the company all that much?
And have those senior employees transfer their knowledge to the junior employees,
so that they can then become senior employees.
Yeah.
when they get when the time is right. Because it seems to me that a lot of companies don't do that, and a lot of supervisors don't want to do that because they want to protect their job. And if somebody else that they have that's a junior to them can do their job as well and is going to work for a little less, well, they may take a protective attitude. Does that happen a lot?
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I'm actually working with I'm hoping to be working with an organization that is actually putting into practice, it's kind of the succession planning, succession development, but what they're doing is they have some great senior talent that wants to retire. They've done their time in the organization, they want to retire. And then again, part of them says, well, no, I'd like to, if there was something I could do to hang around. So the organization is going to create a succession development process using mentoring, where they're going to take some of these senior people and have them mentor the junior people as the future leaders of the company. And I think for an organization to be astute enough to figure that one out, I think that's a place I would want to work.
Exactly, and that's has a twofold advantage. You get to keep some of the people that have been around for a long time that are really gifted at what they do on a perhaps reduced workload, and they can then teach the younger people, which does two things. The younger people not only are learning, but other people that are not necessarily in that program, they get, well, if I do a little bit better job, I can get into this mentoring program, and perhaps that's a great way for me to grow my own self. And so they realize that there's opportunity within the organization. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. And the other part is, by going through this process, what you end up doing is you create that repository of corporate knowledge that would have walked out the door had we not had a program in place to be able to hang on to it. And I'm doing a bit of work with an organization right now to be able to target in on, where is the corporate knowledge that you need to run the business? Where is it? Number two, where is it stored? Who has access to it? Who needs access to it? And all of those factors. So not sort of a knowledge transfer, knowledge management strategy. And that doesn't exist in most organizations today. It's when I retire and walk out the door, I take all that stuff with me.
And that's not a good thing. That's not
No.
because and the other thing is if you have if you have a, and I want to talk about this and touch on it a little bit, but if you have a problem with with the culture of your company, and so you're having good people leave to go other places, what you end up having are secondary, not so good employees who can't find better places to go. So they're there and their productivity isn't very good either, nor is their attitude all that good because they want to go too, but they can't find another place.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in a couple places that I was doing some stuff, it was, the good employees leave because they can.
Yeah. And the bad employees, they can't leave. But you can't fire everybody. And so the common denominator is the quality of the employee. The average employee goes down. The expectations of the other employees also goes down. So your productivity suffers, and you can't fly that way. You can't operate in a great way. So culture and turnover and job satisfaction, all these things, it's really, I don't run a company today. It must be really hard to balance all those balls and to throw all those in the air and keep them going.
Well, and you wonder why, you'll kind of wonder why we have young entrepreneurs who maybe get started and maybe get 3 to 5 years and then they pack it in because there's all those balls to have to be juggling and catch them and then throw them back in the air again. They're just not equipped for that.
How would you recommend if somebody wanted to be an entrepreneur or wanted to start their own company? I guess that would be an entrepreneur. How would you recommend that is there schooling that they can take that is advantageous? Is it just working in an environment and then learning from that environment and then taking the best of it to their own place? How would you recommend if somebody wanted to become an entrepreneur and start their own business, start their own restaurant or whatever it is? How would you recommend that they prepare themselves for that adventure?
So I know that there are organizations, accelerators, boot camps, whatever you want to call them, that actually provide assistance and guidance to entrepreneurs. But you can also, if you can, like I'm a volunteer mentor with the Sir Richard Branson Entrepreneur Program in the Caribbean. And what we're doing is we're working with young entrepreneurs to make sure that they've got the skill sets they need in order to take their dream and make their dream a reality. And so that's what we do. And here's an interesting tidbit is that with one of the organizations that I do, the volunteer mentoring to help their young entrepreneurs, we actually have a mental health component because what people don't realize is that your mental health is impacted by the stress, the anxiety, and all of that you encounter as a prospective business owner, entrepreneur going forward.
It strikes me that being an entrepreneur, because I are one, trying to be one anyway, and as an entrepreneur, you have certain expectations of yourself and of other people, but the reality is that it's yours, so you're willing to work a lot harder necessarily than you can actually expect other people to do because they got lives, they got stuff that they're doing, they got raising their kids and stuff. They're not, and they don't own the business. Yet we as an entrepreneur have a tendency to say, why aren't they working harder? I'm working 80 hours a week and I can at least expect 60 hours a week, 6 days a week from this guy. And he says, nah, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to do that. So then you lose a perfectly good either management employee or somebody like that because your expectations are not in line with what they're willing to do. Does that ever happen?
Well, it does, and that's why you always, with prospective employees, you want to have the conversation. You need to set the expectations is probably the best way to describe it. So it's like when I think of a mentoring relationship, I need to know, what do you expect to get from the journey we're going to go on together? So it's somewhat similar in that regard, is that if I'm going to hire you to come on board and be part of my dream, my vision, I need you to understand that there are certain things that I expect of you in order for you to be a part of that. And what we can do is we can then structure it maybe monetarily, or, even I I thought at the beginning of my journey that I would have shares available to employees. I'm not so much leaning that way anymore, because I don't know that anybody that I know that would put the time and effort into what I offer, that they would do that for just to have their name on the shingle.
I get that, and that is so true. I was a stupid employer because I ended up working harder than I expected my assistants to work, and I expect than anybody else to work. So I was working 55, 60 hours a week as a general manager of a restaurant, and my assistants were like, "Woohoo! This is a 45-hour a week job. I love it." And I never could quite figure that out, but they were happy. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I did. I went through. It was actually one of the Branson. It was a restaurant, and it was two young guys that actually formed a partnership, and we're opening this new restaurant. And the stuff that they went through is exactly what you're talking about. Is that, the one owner was putting in the long days. The other owner was putting in only what he needed to put in to sort of stay under the radar, so to speak. And it was, we had to focus. In that particular case, it ended up turning into something a little more serious, in that there were some mental health issues that we needed to deal with in order to get everybody back on track again. And by doing so, then we were able to have them both kind of rowing in the same direction.
That can be really hard, especially with a partnership like that. And I knew a guy who opened up a restaurant and thought he was going to do really well, and he liked being the boss, and he liked being able to sit at the end of the bar and watch things as they went on. Unfortunately, while he was sitting at the end of the bartender kept on filling his glass, and so he ended up drinking all of his profits and ended up having to close the restaurant because he was there 90 hours a week, but he was spending 40 of it in the tank, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so it's hard being an entrepreneur, and I would just highly suggest, if you're going to do it, especially in the restaurant business, be prepared, because you're going to spend a lot of time there, and it's going to take time for you to get your feet under you, and to take care of everything that you got to take care of. By the way, we're talking with, again, Doug Lawrence, and if you go to his website, which is TalentC.ca. Not only you are a mentor, and a mentor's mentor, and a mentor's mentor, you're an author, and you've got a book out that's called "You're Not Alone: Mental Health Mentors Take the Journey with You," and it's the #1 Amazon bestseller. What decided you to write the book, and what tips within the book do you offer people?
So I actually was approached by some colleagues who said that you need to write this book, and so it was as a result of them suggesting that, because the idea behind the book was to talk about how mentoring could be part of the mental health support structure. And I also talked a bit about grief, because at that particular time point, not a lot on the grief part, because we were still going through with the passing of my wife and that, but it was primarily focused around that. So the tips are, that were certainly in the book, was the tips were centered around the whole aspect of mentoring and mental health, and how having that as part of the support structure, how critical that was, because it doesn't exist today in most organizations.
You know, I just heard this the other day, by the way, that in Canada, when you have a baby, you get a year off. Now in the United States, it goes somewhat like this. Oh, you're going to have a baby? Oh, you're contracting? Okay, well, why don't you go to the hospital, have the baby, and then take lunch off? And then if you can get back here by 3, that would be great. And we don't do any of that, which is really quality of life is what life is all about, isn't it?
You would hope so, yes.
And sometimes, so I would like to think that an employer that is really takes care of their employees and really wants the best for them will give them the time that they need, especially if there's mental health issues, if there is you lose somebody. And by the way, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
If you lose somebody that is a wife or a husband or a child that is very important to you, you cannot, I don't care who you are. Some companies will give you a 3-day bereavement leave. It's like, no, you cannot do that in 3 days. But they won't offer counseling either. It's important that companies start to treat people like people, and that they've got ups and they've got downs and they've got mental stuff and they've got marriages that aren't working, or their kids run away. There's just lots of things going on, and we really need to look out after each other. And it behooves an employer, in my opinion, to take care of those issues, because they get an employee that is, number one, grateful, and is a better employee for life. Isn't that kind of how it works?
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I know all the things that you said when my mom passed away. I remember I got 5 days of bereavement leave, and no counseling was available. And even to suggest, you may want to take a look at outside counseling outside of the organization, that wasn't even on the horizon whatsoever. So you end up having to deal with it on your own accord, on figuring out how am I going to get what I need to get to help me begin to heal. And you really had no one. I had fellow employees walk up to me and start a conversation, and I happened to mention that my mom had passed away, and they said, "What do you mean your mom passed away? I wish I would have known, because I would like to have been part of the celebration of life and all that sort of stuff." And I said, "Well, I would have assumed that the management would have sent a message out, that Doug's mother passed away, and please extend him your sympathies." But such was not the case. And when you have organizations that will go that extra mile, so to speak, to do things like that, those are the organizations that you want to stay and be a part of for the long term, not the short term.
That's exactly right. Again, we're talking with Doug Lawrence. I can't believe that they did that. And that can be a learning experience to somebody else who's sitting here and they have an organization. And I think it's really important that the HR person notify them, because it would be nice for them to send a card, and also to do a company-wide announcement saying, and they can do that for every employee. And then people become more of a family when they do that, I think. And we'll talk about that when we come back. Again, Doug Lawrence is our guest. I'm enjoying this conversation, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
And TalentC.ca is where you go to find out more about him. We'll be right back in just 30 seconds. Don't go away, please.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew a girl so smart, so responsible, she must be a keeper.
Doug, I play that commercial, and I have never in my entire life text a girl and she says, "Yes, I'd love to go out with you." I, generally speaking, have to send them flowers and lots of money. No, not lots of money. I said that wrong. Anyway, Doug Lawrence. Doug Lawrence is our guest, and he is a mentor, and he works with companies, and he tries to help companies get out of their own way so that they can work together as a team to make it all work better for everybody. And that includes the hierarchy and the structure with which you structure your organization. What I mean by that, when I was in the restaurant business, I would hire hostesses, and I would hire bus people, and those people eventually, if they had the skills, would become the wait staff. And I would promote them because I had an opportunity to see them. I never hired a waiter or a waitress just as a waiter or waitress. They all needed to come through the program to do that, so that I could judge them in stressful moments and that kind of thing. And so, as well as, I always hired dishwashers and promoted dishwashers to cook. They appreciated it because the next time I hired a dishwasher, they knew that they would get the opportunity to make more money and to become a cook and to earn a trade. To my way of thinking, that was a better way to operate. What do you think?
I agree. Because and that's part of the succession development idea is, sit down with your employee and say exactly as you've sketched it out, where, here's where you are today, and for you to get to where you would like to be tomorrow, here are the things we need to do, the knowledge that you need to gather in order to be able to fulfill that position. So as a cook, you would need to know certain things to be able to do food prep and all that other stuff. So it's a matter of creating that opportunity, number one, for the employee, but number two, also creating the roadmap they need to follow in order for them to get to that position.
And you know what I found out was that because they knew that policy was in place, they became a better hostess or a better bus person or a better dishwasher, because they knew if they did a good job, there would be a reward in it, rather than, in some cases, companies say, "Oh, he's too good of a dishwasher. I can't let him become a cook because he's much too good at what he does." That is counterproductive, in my opinion.
Yes, I 100% agree. 100% agree. Because I've seen, and we went through the restaurant that we did the work with in Kingston, Jamaica, and it was the same sort of thing. Is getting one particular employee prepared to step into a leadership or management position, and there were things we had to do to go through that. And part of that was also making sure that he or she had the tools that they needed to have in order to be successful in that type of a position. So communicating effectively was one that kind of rose to the top, as well as, being able to develop trusting relationships with the employees, so that, they didn't think that you were always out to get them, but that you had their best interests in mind, no matter what.
And by the way, we've been talking with Doug Lawrence. If you are a CEO of a company, I would highly recommend that you give him a call or go to his website, which is TalentC.ca, and talk to him about working with your company, because I think he can not only, as he says on his website, high turnover can cost you literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year if you don't solve the problem. He can help you solve it, and he's cheaper than that. Not much, but he's a little cheaper than that. So, Doug, thank you for being here. I've really appreciated talking to you today.
Thank you so much. I've thoroughly, as usual, I've enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. And by the way, go get his book. You Are Not Alone. Mental Health Mentors Take the Journey with You. Again, thank you very much, Doug. It's been great having you here. And you have an awesome day.
You as well.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.